Hey there, podcast fam. Don't forget to click on the show notes and buy us a coffee. Your support not only quenches our thirst, but it also fuels our podcast with necessary subscriptions and equipment to keep it going strong. Every and any contribution means the world to us. Thank you for being a part of our journey. No Todo Se Cura con Vix loves you.
Here we are. Welcome to No Todo Se Cura con Vic. This is your girl, Haydee.
And this is Jessie.
And we have a fabulous, fabulous person on our podcast today. Her name is Jasmine. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of something about Jasmine. She is exceptional. One of the things that Latinos struggle with is finance. We sometimes don't know how to manage financial literacy, and we normally need to seek help. And thankfully, we have somebody in the Latinx community that can provide that for us. So here's a little something about Jasmine. Jasmine Ramirez is a seasoned therapist turned serial entrepreneur based in New Jersey. At her group practice, Honest Hour, she serves as the founder and specializes in providing financial therapy. Beyond her clinical work, Jasmine supports BIPOC communities through individual and couple financial coaching and speaking engagements via her company. By Any Means Coaching, recently she founded the Latinx Practice Collective, aiming to help Latinx clinicians elevate their private practices with confidence. When she's not immersed in her multiple businesses, you go, girl. You can find her. You can find her cooking up recipes and playing board games or traveling with her husband, which is beautiful. A little bit of everything there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Jasmine, thank you so much for coming and showing us the way. Because boy, do I
Absolutely.
need some
We all
guidance
need
and
a little
tips.
financial therapy.
And we already know what that does when we grow up in a space where, that's not taught and we just like learn through experience, and sometimes it's not the right thing. So thank you again for coming, and welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Welcome, Jasmine. We're so happy to have you. Yes, and we're very excited about this episode because we've been talking about, we definitely need to talk about finance in this platform. Most of our listeners are first gen, and even me as a first gen, I feel like my parents, it's not that they didn't want to teach us how to manage money, but in my case, they were pretty much on survivor mode. It was about, let's work. If we need to get 2 jobs, we're going to get 2 jobs. Porque hay que pagar la renta, hay que buscar la comida para el muchacho. And there's no space of like, let's talk about money, how to save money, how to manage money. It's really treated as, we need to survive and we need the money, to do so. Like, I remember my mom always saying to me, oh, tú sabes, tú tienes que poner un dinerito in case of an emergency, but never really explain how to do that.
Yeah. Right.
Or how that looks like.
Yeah.
And she'll be like, aunque sea 5 pesos. But
Okay.
Yeah.
yes, but we never sat to talk about finance. But there was always like this expectation that you should know and that you need money to survive.
Right.
It was never seen as money can help you. Money, you can also grow as a person, as an individual, if you with your finances, right?
Yeah.
It was more about get a job so that you can pay your bills and survive.
Yep. A means to an end. And I think that's why it's so important to give ourselves so much grace when having this conversation and when managing our finances, because the truth is that, like you mentioned, they were in survival mode. It's a privilege to be able to teach and to slow down and to actually like have choice with your money, right? Like before, when mommy and papi are working, it's like they're working to pay the bills. They're working to put food on the table. There was no choice. It was survival, right? So it is a privilege now to be at a place where perhaps we have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more freedom to really decide, well, what do I want to do with it? Because all my bills are actually paid at night. Todavía me queda. Like,
Yeah.
what else am I going to do? Right.
Privilege,
And that's
exactly.
a privilege in itself. That's a privilege in itself. And so just giving ourselves grace with those, with wherever you're at with your finances, whether you're in debt, whether you have money saved, whether you're still figuring it out, looking for a job, like giving ourselves grace because this is a journey, right? Like we didn't have the same sort of upbringing and foundation that maybe some of our other counterparts had.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So I want to go in and because I have so much questions to ask you. So I just want to dive in right away because I'm so curious. Why don't you tell us a little bit of what is financial therapy?
Such a great question. Financial therapy. I love this question because it's kind of like, it's a new field, I like to say, right? It's kind of this like, new age way of thinking about finances, where before we thought about finances as like you just go to like a financial advisor or, you go to an accountant, some like stuffy, white guy, to be honest, right? That's like telling us what to do with our money and how to invest and like doing it all. But financial therapy really is this opportunity to become more self-aware about our own experiences with money. It's an opportunity for us to become curious about our behaviors around money and to make intentional changes around how we're managing our money, right? I think of it as really this like beautiful merge between financial literacy and mental health, because that's exactly what it is, right? It's this like merge between the both. And many of us honestly don't need financial advisors. That's the honest truth. Like we need the basics, right? Like we're figuring it out. We're figuring out budgeting. We're figuring out debt. We're figuring out how to maximize, I don't know, our points so we can travel, right? Like we're not to say that we can't get to a financial advisor at some point, but we're just looking at the foundation right now. And I think that's where we need to start. And that's what financial therapy helps us to do. It helps us to kind of blend those things, figure out a process with also figuring out, but it's a process that's informed by our emotions and our experiences around money.
Okay. So it's financial therapy more of tapping into our beliefs about money, our experiences about money, compared to financial advice, in which is someone telling you just pretty much like numbers. This is what you need to do. This
Exactly.
is your number. But sometimes it's sort of like I was telling Haydee the other day, we all know we need to eat more greens. We all know, right? Like that's nothing new, but some of us still struggle to eat healthy, right?
Right.
And so it's more about exploring the root of why. Is that
Yep.
what it is?
Exactly. It's really understanding your own experiences and your own beliefs, and then using that information and making an informed decision around how you're going to manage your finances. So for instance, like that's a great point with the food situation, right? Because oftentimes, you'll see a nutritionist and maybe they're like, okay, you got to eat more greens, get your salad, blah, 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 but not putting in the cultural context that we eat rice and beans at home. That's a part of the diet.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a very well balanced diet if you just understood how to portion everything out, right? Like you have beans, you have fiber, you have, all these health benefits in beans. A rice, maybe not half the plate, but maybe we could do a quarter of the plate, right? But it's understanding things in terms of the cultural context and then figuring out what works best for you in that situation.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. Because even like I was saying, I'm first gen, right? And I have much more better opportunities than my parents. I have my own private practice. And still, there are times that I see myself managing money as if I'm on survival.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause
Totally
that's our
believe.
behavior. That's like that's our first experience with money typically informs the way that we're going to manage money in the future, which is why financial therapy is so helpful, because what we want to do first and foremost is become aware. Like, what are my financial habits? What are the things that I do? What are the triggers that I have? Literally yesterday, I was talking to my husband about um my business finances. Similar to you, I have a private practice, and it came into me where I'm like I had to pay all these additional expenses this month. And out of nowhere, I was like, I can't have another month like this. Like, we're gonna sink.
Yeah.
And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, literally, I want you to pull up your savings account. I want you to see what's in there. But in my mind, I'm like, we're done. This is it. Like, we're about to fold, you know?
Yes.
And he's like, no, you're operating out of survivors, like, you know, the survivor's feeling. Like, check your savings account. Like, let's make an informed decision, because actually we have saved for the rainy day. Like, we've had that privilege to save for a rainy day. So that totally resonates with that in terms of just like being in that mode. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
automatic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's this moment where you're like, oh, I'm doing really good. And then you want to go ahead and book a trip. And
Or
Totally.
you're in the mall, you're like, ay, esa carterita sí se ve linda.
so
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about the cultural background and how it influenced financial beliefs and practices?
Oh my gosh. We could spend a whole day talking about our
I
cultural
know.
background and how it influences. And I think it really, you know, it's dependent on the person. It's dependent on the situation, right? Because even though we're all Latino, we all have different experiences. That's the truth, right? And so, for instance, like my family, I had both sides where, you know, my papi's side of the family was more into perception of like what everybody else in La Comunidad was thinking about us.
Oh,
Like we were not the poor one. Like we were
Yeah.
not the poor family.
Yeah.
But the cell phone bill got turned off a couple times. You know what I mean? But nobody knew. Right? The service
el
bill.
secreto, el
Yeah.
secreto. No
Right?
diga
But it's
nada.
like, who are we playing? We live in the projects. You know what I mean? Like, who are we fronting to right now? But it is like that perception of just like, we're gonna dress nicely. We're gonna have these things. And so part of me was influenced by that, because then when I got older, I'm like, okay, well, when I'll never forget this. I got my first job and I was like, I got to go to Banana Republic. I need like, you know, a little blazer to fit in, total social work outfit. And it's like, no, you're making $55,000. Like, I think you need to be at Old Navy in the Gap, which is no shade to that. You know what I mean? But like, I was not making Banana Republic money, but it's that idea of like, we need to present in a certain way. And so sometimes that comes from our background. And then there's the other side where it's like, perhaps you had, you know, very limited means, and now you're like always in scarcity mode, right? Where you're like, I can't spend on anything, right? So it really is like how we internalize whatever we see, right? Both situations were the same. Both of the situations were that we didn't have enough money to kind of go the whole way, but how we internalize it can really be very different. So our cultural beliefs, you know, it's really based off of, yes, like the collectivist culture, how we perceive money, how we perceive building wealth, you know, typical things around maybe not believing in the banking system or investing, feeling like, oh my gosh, that's gambling. Don't do that, right? Like, let's just save it under the mattress. But also really understanding how we perceive it as individuals too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And working with the Latino community, Jasmine, what are the common financial challenges that you notice we face?
Oh, crap.
I know, right?
Sorry,
That's
not.
another episode.
Which I mean, I think the things that are the things that are most prominent to me are fear of the banking system. I see a lot of fear of the banking system. Fear of like trying new things. So whether that's like, you know, opening up a high yield savings account, it's like, wait a second, what is this? Like, no, I opened up this Bank of America when I was, you know, 15 with mommy and papi. I'm going to stick to that, even though it's not helping me do anything. Or I've even had clients that are like, I don't use banks at all. Like I literally keep my money in cash. And when I have to, you know, go to the bank, I have a bank account and I deposit just that exact amount to pay my bill, and that's it. Right. So I
Wow.
think there's a lot of fear around the banking system. I think that there's also another thing that I see is how we decide to build wealth. I think there's a huge emphasis on the only way to build wealth is through real estate, which it's one way to build wealth. It can be an important way to build wealth, but there's so many other ways for us to build
It's
wealth.
not the only.
It's not the only way to build wealth. And I find that people are getting into, unfortunately, really sticky financial situations because they go into purchasing a home probably sooner than they can afford, or not realizing all of the other things that need to go into the home. It's like they bought the home and now it's empty because they don't have money for furniture,
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
right?
Or the lie, or
Or the light or anything else, right? And it's like, that's a real thing. And the other thing that I also see is just our discomfort around convenience and ease. My goodness, I had this conversation with a client the other day. She was like, I cannot for the life of me commit to purchasing chopped fruit at the supermarket because it's too expensive. I'd rather buy the fruit and chop it up because it's too expensive. But it's like your life is so busy. Like you're working multiple jobs. Like it's okay to pay a premium for the convenience of doing something, right? And
to
having
make
that
your life
ease,
easier.
right? And having that ease. But it's just like this mental. You know, when you go to the supermarket, you look at the chicken, you're like, which bucket is like 5 cents cheaper? You know what I mean?
Why do we still do this? Oh, 34?
Right?
Hold on.
We want to get the closest dollar. I do. Right? But it's like, when we're joking about this like conversation, it's like, why do we still do this?
I
It's
don't know
based off of the weight. Like, you pay a little more, you get a little bit more meat. Like, that's what it is. It's not a fraud.
Yeah. It's true.
That
It's
is so
so
funny.
true.
Oh my God.
Everything you're saying is absolutely right. Like even with the banking, right? Like I remember when I was a little girl, my parents used to do. I don't know if you guys ever heard of what's it called?
Yeah.
What's
Yes.
it?
Una
Sociedad.
asociación, una
Yes.
sociedad.
Yeah.
Ajá.
Which was a form of like banking. Someone
Yep.
would hold all the money.
Yep.
You would give the money to the person, and then there, depending how many people were
El
in that
número.
El número.
Mhm.
el número. And so the way that they used to do it is, if I need the cash right away, I'll be
Yep,
one of the
right.
top 5. And if I need him or her to hold the money because I don't trust myself or trust the bank, I'm like the last number.
Yeah.
And that's the way
Mhm.
they used to do it. And that also, I remember when I moved out, that's what they would recommend for me to do. Ponte una
I did that.
asociación.
Yo me puse en la sociedad.
Yeah.
Una vez en high school. Yo estaba en high school, en una sociedad, y después I was working part-time, and then como savage, I took the first number, y después tenía yo que estar dando de
That's so funny.
I legit did that. I was like, this is not working out for me.
That's so funny.
You see how crazy it is? Like the things that we learn from like our environment and we carry through. Like
Yeah.
I thought that was a solution to some of my problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a solution to our problems, because the truth is, in our home countries, for so many of us, the banking system wasn't reliable.
That's
No.
true.
You know what I mean? That wasn't a reliable way to actually save money. And then, we come here and obviously we're going to continue the same things that helped us survive back home, and not recognizing that, yeah, there's FDIC insurance now. Like you can leave your money in a bank up to $250,000. The bank could crash tomorrow and your money's secure. Nobody's like learning that though, right? Like that's like
No.
No.
that's like new information. Like, what do you mean I can trust this bank?
Yes.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And some of my clients still do that. And honestly, I think that I'm always like, we have to be culturally sensitive, right? Like I'm not going to ever tell my client, don't ever do that. No. But I do want to educate them, and I do want to also make them aware of why they're doing that. Like, what if your goal is to be able to save within your community and feel like you're also a part of your community, and like making sure that other people are also, getting the benefit out of it, and it brings you guys together as a community. Your family is doing it for something, right? Like I've seen people do it within the family. Like that makes sense. Like go ahead
Yeah.
and do it. But just know that there are other options that are also there that you can save money, and it will be protected. And I would
Yeah.
encourage you to also put your money in one of those. Right?
Yeah.
Like you can do
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Learn a
Absolutely.
little something. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
it felt like when it was introduced to me, like this is the way. Like there's
Yeah.
no other way. This is the way. I had to do my own reading and studying to understand. Like, wait a minute. Like, why are they doing this? And you're absolutely right. Right? They come from countries like my family. They're Dominican. Come from countries that they don't trust. They don't trust the
Banking
banks.
system.
Yeah, they don't
Mhm.
trust politics. They don't
Right.
trust what's happening in the economy. So they come to this country, and in addition to that, they don't know how banking works here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They don't have the education or the knowledge to know what's going on. But for us, we do. But
Yeah.
it's just the same thing that I was talking about, survivor mode. If you were raised by someone who is on survivor mode and fear of money, you're going to carry that, even though
Yeah.
you have more of a knowledge of what makes sense.
Yeah.
Even like the real estate, I have clients and I know people that they do. It's like, I need to have this house. I need to have this house, and I need to have it at a particular age too, at a particular age. And then they don't even get to really enjoy the home because they're busting their ass to pay this mortgage, to to maintain a house. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of money.
And that is, again, kind of like connected to this American dream.
Mm.
You made it. If you have a house, you made it.
Yeah. But everything
Yeah.
else is falling apart.
All around you.
But
All
literally
around you.
everything is falling apart, right? Like, forget your mental health, forget the fact that you're working 3 jobs, but you have a house, right? And I
You
do
have a house.
like similar. I have clients that are like, I have a client that is literally working 2 full-time jobs
That's what they
and has a
do.
husband who also has a full-time job, 3 full-time jobs to support this house. It's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be, and it doesn't help when things are just so expensive nowadays. So
Totally.
that's got to be more fear and more stress, you know?
It is.
Oh, God.
It is extremely, it's challenging. It is all connected to the belief. Even like you said, like saving 5 cents. If you really think about it, it's not like you're going to take those 5 cents and put them in an investment account.
It's actually so funny to me, but I think that speaks to the like innate sort of automatic experience that we, sometimes we don't. That's financial advisor is not going to tell you about that. You're not going to come to them and be like, "What do I do about this bucket of chicken that
Yeah.
like one over the other?" They're going to look at you like you're nuts. But like, really, a financial therapist is there to be like, "Let's talk about that. Why was it hard for you to spend the
You're
extra
seeing-
30 cents?"
And there's people that don't, now that you bring that up, I would have never thought that this is a conversation I can have with someone. You know,
Yeah.
you brought this up and I'm thinking, no, this is normal. And then the thing is that when growing up too, I remember my mom would like send me to buy stuff at the supermarket and she'll give me $20 and she'll be like, mira, cómprame esto y me compra lo más barato. And don't do this and don't do, and I'm like, $20, 10 items?
Yeah.
How am I going to pull this off? And this is me as a teen, you
Yep.
know, trying to budget, trying to find the cheapest. Otherwise, she'll be like, it's whatever. And I'm
My
like,
mom would send me back.
yeah,
Don't
I was
want it. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I'm sweating bullets. Like, she was like, and she would put the flyer at home, be like, this was supposed to be 2 for $4. Then go show them this picture. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, I went through that too. And it's like knowing that we grew up that way and knowing some of my friends from other, backgrounds that never in their life have been put through this, who would never know what the struggle was.
Wow.
It's intense. But one of the things that I'm really interested in speaking of, since we're on this topic,
Yeah.
what are like effective budgeting options for Latinos families or people that are going through, either financial hardship or just learning about finance?
Listen, I tell every single client that works with me, your budget is going to look different from the person before you and the next person after you. I do not believe that there is like a one size fits all budget because everybody has a different situation and everybody has different triggers. So for instance, I have clients that are like, my trigger is seeing my account below $300. Well, we're going to have to keep that account like above $300 at all times, right? Versus somebody that's like, oh, I'm good with, I don't know, $100 in my account and that works for me, right? Like, so everybody's budgeting system is going to look different. It doesn't need to look like, I'll tell you what it doesn't need to look like. It doesn't need to look like a spreadsheet. It doesn't need to be this like overly complicated thing. Some people like apps. Some people like like the spreadsheets. Some people enjoy what what I teach is called the anti-discipline budget, which I've recently adopted and some of my clients really enjoy this, which is that every account has its own purpose. So I have a bills account and I have a spending account. All of my bills go on one checking account. I never have to worry about it because my check comes in and it splits the way that I need it to split into a bills account and then the rest into my spending or the rest into my savings account, however I want. So that way it's automatic and I'm not having to be like, okay, I have $100 for groceries this week, or, not everybody wants that same level of, I guess, detail when it comes to their budget. So there are ways out there that you can do it where it's not this overly complicated, like I only have, this dollars for this thing, or this came up and now the budget's a bust and I have to let go of it, right? Like figure out a system that works for you and know that it could look very different from the person next to you. And it doesn't mean that you're doing it incorrectly.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that a lot of times also for us, it's difficult to get the help because there's shame and we feel like we have to be doing it the same way that everyone else. Yes.
That word shame is huge. And you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. I've seen, I personally, for me, I hate talking about finances because it's
Welcome.
something that
Welcome to this conversation. I'm so glad I'm here. It's like, I
it's
hate
one
this
of my
topic.
this is amazing topic, and Jessie, Maggie, and I have talked about how we really want somebody, because I think that we desperately need to hear, what you have to say, because it's going to shift other people's lives. Another thing is like how important it is for savings and investment for individuals, right? Tailored for especially the Latino community. Like, what are ways to invest? What do you think is a good approach?
I would say before we even get into the investing side of things, always make sure that you're saving. You have that emergency fund that Mommy and Papi talked about, that we're putting some money on, to the side. And what I think is different from perhaps other communities within the Latino community is also put money aside for your family. Like, it's okay to have a mini emergency fund for like if, your cousin needs cash on the side really quick. That's separate from your own emergency funds, right? Because what I find is that oftentimes we are collective communities. So if somebody needs something in our family, or there's a funeral and everybody's, chipping in, or somebody gets sick and now we need to buy compra for them, or whatever the case is, like we don't want that guilt that like, okay, I don't have it, or I'm just gonna, take from my own personal emergency fund. So I always ask my, my Latino clients, like, is it important to you if you had a family emergency? Like, where would you take this from, or how would that affect you? Most of the time, we're like, I'm gonna help. Like, if my mom needs money, or if my sister needs money, like, F this budget. Like, I'm giving it all. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, if that's important to you, then let's actually create a savings for those emergencies, right? Because not everybody in our community is as prepared as we will be. Right. And if you're going to be that person, we also want to be extra prepared and not tap into our own stuff, our own emergency funds, where it's going to put us at risk now. Right.
Yeah.
Separate savings account for family stuff. And then once we get through, our own savings, family savings, then we can kind of go into investing. And I always say it's best to start if you have a job that offers a match, start there. Start with an employer match, get your match at work. And then oftentimes we can look at things like the Roth or anything like that to begin with.
Okay.
That is so true. Like I've never thought of that. I've never thought, because it's true, when there's an emergency, the whole family gathers and we're trying to figure out how to support and financially and in every aspect.
Yeah.
And you're right. Most of the time you're just like, I got to do what I got to do. I just got to get that money and tap into my savings or whatever I have to do to make sure to help and support.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. But we never, you're absolutely right. Like if you read books, mostly, for white families.
5 months aside, right? The thought is that everybody has their own emergency funds. But the truth is that not everybody in our community is as privileged as those folks to be able to have an emergency fund. They may not have the knowledge, but of course, like we're not going to let our family go without, like if my parents needed anything, it's like talked to my cousin the other day and he was like, I feel like I don't have anybody to lean back on if something were to happen and I lost my job. And it's like, hello, I have an I know you don't know it, but I have an emergency fund specifically for family, so please call me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
how beautiful of a
Mhm.
gift to not be stressed out about that and to feel like we can all help each other in that way and not be a
Yeah.
financial burden to each other. Like this is, and the other thing is that it also puts boundaries on how much we're willing to give. That's another thing, right? Because sometimes if we just have this like unlimited amount of like, okay, I have, my emergency fund, I don't know, it's $10,000. I'm just going to give everything that's in my emergency fund. I'll clear it out. But if we have like a parameter and it's like, I set aside $5,000 a year for family emergencies. And if I need to tap into that, I know that my max is $5,000.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
It's not this like unlimited amount. It's like, no, $5,000 is my max. Because if not, then I'm tapping into my personal safety at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. I think that also helps with the shame and the guilt that comes with money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's what happens is you don't have that saving, right? That for me, that this is
Yeah.
new. Like, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then you feel like, okay, I'm gonna have to tap into my savings or whatever the case is. And there goes the shame. Like, oh my God, I didn't have extra money to give to my family. And then is the guilt. I just don't know how to manage my money.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And you're back into the
Because
same
once you don't have,
cycle.
it's
Yeah.
back in the same hole. Yeah.
Back in the
Yeah.
same hole. Like, okay, wait, I don't have anything. I had something and now, there's nothing in there for me to give or for myself or anything like that. And you put yourself back into scarcity is what happens. You put yourself back into survivor's mode when you clear out all of your savings, right? Because there's truly nothing to hold you. There's no accountability. There's no safety net.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything you worked so hard for, you're back to that
Yep.
place you had to come out of.
Totally.
Oh,
What
wow.
are like resources and available, like that are available for financial education and support? What kinds of, I know that I at one point even went on, what is it, a Khan Academy to learn about financial literacy. And I put my daughter, my niece to take the course with me.
Oh, cool.
And it was like just basic things. But
Yeah.
believe it or not, they were basic. But I just learned a few things from that too. I was just
Yeah.
like, oh shit. So what do you recommend?
There's a lot of like nonprofit, especially if you're in New York City, there's a lot of like nonprofit organizations that offer financial literacy. So I would definitely do some research into that. I think Green Path is one in New York. They're actually a debt consolidation nonprofit company, but their website is pretty robust in terms of just like understanding general financial literacy practices.
Oh.
Also, if you find somebody that has that does financial therapy, if you have insurance, right, like there could be opportunities for you to be able to go and get support in that way and learn from somebody that has certified financial social workers. That's a website in itself, certified financial social work. You can get connected to somebody that offers these services and that does literacy and also the emotional aspect as well.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there. Financial Therapy Association, another great place. It's a lot of like culturally sensitive, sort of emotionally informed financial literacy.
Wonderful.
Jasmine, how do you make the decision as an individual to say, I think I need financial therapy? Because when people think about therapy, they're thinking about emotions, mental health, trauma. It's
Yeah.
very emotional and it's about your well-being. But how did someone says, I think I also need therapy in regards to my money situation?
I will say it will come up, right? Like we are going to talk about maybe some trauma that you had, right, around finances. It is that kind of like emotionally informed, financial literacy. But I think if you're somebody that finds yourself avoiding money, having strong reactions to when somebody asks you for money, or like, like I remember this was a huge one for me at work when somebody would be like, oh, look, can you like donate to the pot? Like, Linda's leaving or like Linda's like retirement. And I'm like, I don't even know Linda. I don't want to retire. I don't want to contribute to Linda's retirement party. Right. But it's like that idea of like, you're messing up my budget. Like I didn't plan for Linda's retirement and now all of a sudden money's due on Friday and I don't know Linda. You know what I mean? And then it's like the guilt of not contributing. Anyway, that used to really annoy me a lot. Again, it's because of the shame and the guilt of like being part of the, the collective community. But it's like, I'm like, you're messing up my numbers, right?
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
if there's somebody that has, if you find it very difficult or uncomfortable to have conversations about money, money comes up in your friends' conversations and you're like, oh, let me check my text messages. I don't want anything to do with this conversation, right? Like, smile whenever they talk about retirement at work. You're like, yeah, totally. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, those are probably some indications that it might be good to talk to a financial therapist. If
Yeah.
you find it
Yeah.
difficult to stick with a budget and you're like, I'm constantly overspending, I can't save. Like, these are some kind of indications that it might be helpful to talk to a financial therapist.
Yeah, because you just go deeper and deeper into a hole. You just continue
Yeah.
just, a vicious cycle of like all these toxic relationships you have with money.
Yeah.
So you have to come out of that. Yeah.
And Jasmine, can you give us like briefly, really quick, like how would financial therapy look like for someone who's curious?
Yeah. Financial therapy can look different based off of the provider that you're seeing because everybody has their own style of how and flavor like a therapist. You want to make sure that you have that good connection with them. But typically the way that I do it is that, I'll meet with a client and we'll kind of talk about their financial history. So who are the folks in your family that or your caregivers? How did you first learn about money? What was your experience around money? Kind of getting like that history, right? Around where things started and then kind of figuring out like, all right, what are your challenges with money? Like perhaps we'll talk about, do you feel like you're overspending, underspending? Like what's going on and why do you think that's happening? Right. And so we kind of try to start picking together like the triggers and the beliefs that you currently have and kind of trying to place them to where they came from, becoming financially or becoming more self-aware about that. And then coming up with a plan for how we want to move in the future to make sure that we're addressing those things. So it can be like a longer process, right? Like, because you didn't get this way overnight. This did not happen by osmosis, right? This was not, you didn't wake up at 30 years old, like, overspending out of the womb, right? Like this came from somewhere. So like, let's figure it out. It took you 30 years to get here. It's going to take some time for us to unlearn and relearn new patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
that
Basically
makes
like
sense.
everything else.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are some advice you might have for listeners that are struggling at this moment with these issues of finance?
Yeah. I would say try to find somebody that you feel, even if it's not a financial therapist, but recognizing that you're not alone in it and try to find somebody in your immediate circle, like a close friend, like a true close friend that you're like, I can talk to almost anything with, and just try to have the conversation around money. Like, oh, like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out whether or not I should, budget for this trip or save for debt or like pay for debt, right? Like just starting the conversation just to normalize it a little bit and have open dialogue with somebody. You'll realize that most people also don't know what they're doing. Most people are also figuring it out. But that place alone of like not feeling like you're alone in it is just like, you're like, wait a second, this is so nice, right? Even though we don't want to trauma bond, but we don't want to trauma bond that we all suck with money. You know what I mean? Like, oh no, you can't pay for it. I think it just helps to normalize the conversation that like we can have conversations about this and recognize like we're not alone. And I think hopefully alleviate some of the shame and the guilt that we might experience in all of this is that like we're trying to figure it out together, right? We're all in this together. So I would just say try to have a conversation with somebody about it that you feel comfortable with, to alleviate some of that tension.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've been through that too as well, where I have like those conversations with certain individuals and I realize myself like, oh crap, I'm not on this like roller coaster with money on my own. Yeah.
Totally.
I think that helps alleviate the like you said, the shame and also the guilt. It is, it's extremely, I think in our community, it's so funny, right? Because we don't talk about it, but somehow there's this belief that we all have to kind of figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And that we should know better.
What their expectation is, it's like we automatically have to like understand it.
Yeah.
And
it's like, how do we actually do it in practice? Like, what am I saving? Where's the extra money that I'm not finding?
Yes.
Like it's not adding up. The math ain't mathing.
I'm barely paying these bills. Where am I supposed to find some money to save?
Yeah.
And even when I bought my first house, like I remember going to the bank for myself. I had nobody there. I had no like I'm young. So I'm there like and they're like, oh, do you want to put this in stocks and bonds? Do you want to do and I'm like, who am I talking to? And like what you said, it's like these white men, right? They're telling you what to do with your money. I'm there like, oh, I never even heard about any of these terminologies from even my parents. And if they talked about it, they didn't talk about it with me.
Yeah.
And I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. I mismanaged all of my money. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And again, there was not enough Latinos. There was not enough people guiding me. Oh, this is what you're doing. Even like in the bank, there was no one
100%.
there to help me understand what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure a lot of people went through this as well. And it's so important. I'm so glad that there's something like this that you have.
Anybody that's on your financial team, I'm a huge proponent of this. I had a great tax accountant, but unfortunately, he was not the teaching type. Like, he would just not explain. It was like he was talking at me. And I'm like, and I, like, while I trust that you're doing a fine job, that just doesn't work for me. Like, culturally speaking, like, understanding, even like being in this space, I have much more financial literacy than the general public. But even if I don't feel comfortable asking you a question about what's happening with my money, and you're talking at me with all these terms that todavía I'm like, what are you, like, you're talking another lingo, then you're not the person for me. Like, straight up. So I think, like, you know, when you're going to find a financial therapist or a financial advisor or a tax accountant or an estate lawyer, whatever it is, like, make sure that you find somebody that is willing to actually break it down and not make you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
not
felt
make you
so
feel comfortable
dumb.
about it either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
so,
felt like an idiot.
yeah. Yeah. That it's like what I was saying. My mom is a great saver. So she would always say, aunque sea 5 pesos, you make sure $5. And then she would be like, no te compres ese café, no te compres esa tostada. And just seeing as I got older, she was a great saver, but it wasn't the healthiest. Number one, she never really shared her secret.
Yeah.
And number two, me just making the observation about how she handles money. My mom, she deprives herself of so many good things.
You feel guilty then spending. You feel guilty.
Yes, she does not. I remember one time we went out for dinner and we tipped the waiter. He was a very nice waiter and all. And she looked at the amount that we tipped and she got upset. She was like, why are you spending so much money? Why are you giving him? And it was the whole idea for her is like, you don't need to go out to eat. You don't need to tip this way. You don't need, like, everything is about saving.
Yep.
So her saving looks great. But the stress, the anxiety, not enjoying life is there. So it's extremely hard to, even growing up with her, understanding how do I create a balance?
Right. That's honestly, I feel like such a huge important lesson. People want to come to financial therapy or see a financial advisor because they want to learn how to save. And what I think is like, no, you need to learn how to spend. I want you to learn how to spend money. You know what I mean? Like, and not like, okay, I'm just going to buy whatever I want, but like truly not feel bad about your spending, because what ends up happening is like you spend and you're like, I should be saving. I feel so much guilt because I'm not saving. I need to figure out how to save. It's like, no, you need to learn how to spend and feel good about what your purchasing is. So that way you're not feeling guilty about it. And so that ends up like, you know, my client that was like struggling to cut a pineapple. It's like that spending on convenience is like so far fetched when it's like, I could be buying the pineapple myself and cutting it. I could do my nails at home. It's like, well, these are privileges. These are things that we enjoy. The convenience.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And after working so hard, you know, it's like not to say that you earned it, but you have the right to provide that service for yourself.
Yeah. My mom came to a point where she would be like to my younger sister, Maggie, ven sácame la ceja and wax my eyebrows.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to save the $7, $8.
Yeah.
To the point that Maggie literally got rid of all her eyebrows.
Pobrecita. That's
She was
really
like, you don't
good
need my service anymore. And then I hit my mom like, I should probably go and do my eyebrows before we finish. Oh, no. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's the way that she sees it. She constantly is always telling us, "You're spending too much money. You're spending too much money. You're spending too much money." So then there is that guilt too of like, "Am I? Am I?"
Right. Then you start
Yeah,
questioning.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Shame, and there's shame in both directions, right? There's shame
yeah.
around spending,
Yeah.
and then there's shame if you don't save. I mean, it's like, it's
Yeah.
complicated. It's complicated. And that's why I said it's like we have cultural beliefs that might stem from similar places, but the way that we internalize it is going to be totally different, right? Like somebody might take it and they're going to be like, I'm going to save every single penny. Whereas like there might be somebody else that's like, I don't ever want to feel like I'm poor again. I want to just spend my money because I don't know when it's going to go away, you
That's
know?
so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So
So true.
crazy.
So true.
So I really enjoy having this
Oh
conversation
yeah.
with you, Jasmine, because I swear I learned a few things already. And I know that our listeners are really going to benefit from this information that you've provided. And I would have never thought of having an extra savings account or, an emergency fund for family because, things happen and you
Mhm.
never know when you have to pour into somebody else's cup and help them a little bit. And
Yeah.
having that, I think one of the worst things that I've ever felt was having someone call me. I know how, because I don't like asking for help. Talking about trauma.
Yeah.
I can't, like, it's
Over
something about
independence.
me.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, oh no, I can't, I know what it feels like. But um asking someone else for help when it comes to finance, I know it takes a lot. Some people really struggle asking for help, and when they do and I don't have to help,
It's like
it's
double
tough
whammy.
because you
Yeah.
feel, yeah, you're like, oh, damn, I wish I could like figure out a way to like help this person. I don't have it. So it's so good that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe you don't have that expectation that it's going to come back to you, right? It's like, I can have this
Exactly.
emergency fund and I can just give and not feel like, oh my God, I'm waiting for Fulanito to give me the money back so I can pay my next bill. They said they were going to get it to me by the 15th. Like, no, like, let's just have money on the side and like, be givers. And if
Yeah,
we get it back, fantastic. And if not, like, no harm, no foul, because it was
exactly.
intentionally set aside for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
This
it's
this
true.
is so good. All the information you're giving, I think we all definitely need we need to join financial therapy. We all need to find a financial therapist.
I'm a financial therapist. It's so helpful. It's so helpful. I talk about it honestly. My therapist is not a financial therapist, but I'll talk about it till I'm blue in the face because it impacts, a lot of my decisions, right? Whether I leave a job, whether I start my own business, starting a family, like there's so many conversations. Money permeates every aspect of our lives, getting married, all of that stuff. It permeates every single decision around us. So just making sure that you have a space that you can have conversations about this is so, so important.
Yeah. So can
Yeah.
you tell us where our listeners can find you?
Yeah. So, honesthourtherapy.com is a great place if you're in the New York City area. For financial therapy. Also, by any means coaching, bam.coaching on Instagram is another great place to find me. If you're not in the New York City area, I do coaching on that side. I also run like women's circles in that, which are so fun. For like the
Oh,
top women, which is really, really great. I keep it really small. Again, to create that community, like kind of like a sociedad, but without saving money circles. But it is just like a great place for us to come together and like learn together and experience conversations around finances and be empowered by it. So either way, you can't go wrong. Bam.coaching or honesthourtherapy.com. And we can get you connected. And if I'm not the person for you or I'm not the flavor for you, Financial Therapy Association is a great place to start and just check out other resources there.
That's
that's
amazing.
beautiful.
We're
Oh,
definitely
thank
going to
you.
share that with our
Yeah.
followers and
Yeah,
listeners. Yeah. Wow.
it would be in our show notes.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you so much, Jasmine, and all the
This is so
best in your
fun.
future endeavors. I am very, very excited about this. The mental health and finance combined together, I think, is making people crazy. So I any help and support that
Yeah.
circle can
Yeah.
really
Totally.
move mountains.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is great that we're talking about it because the stigma is strong. Money
Mhm.
to have these conversations in our community, it's very difficult. many of us feel alone.
Yeah.
Many of us, there's so much shame. And so it's time to really like let go of the stigma and let's have these conversations. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for taking this time and sharing all of your knowledge
Thank
with
you.
us and our listeners.
Okay. I'm glad
Yes.
they enjoyed.
And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to No Te Lo Seguro Convicts. You already know it's your girl Haydee and Jessie. Maggie had to do parenting stuff. Parenting duties came, it's priority.
She's a soccer mom.
Yes, yes, she is. And we love you all. Stay safe. Ciao.
Bye.